Dust settled between my teeth as the helicopter blades sliced through the air above. I tightened my hold on the boy's hand, steering him down the alley towards the awaiting convoy. Then, against my chest, the satphone vibrated, frantic, as if something alive was trapped beneath armor. I nearly disregarded it. No one responds during an extraction. Yet something deeper than training, something beyond orders, something that resonated solely with a mother, compelled my thumb to swipe. Mrs. The voice faltered, strained with urgency. This is St. Francis Children's. Your daughter is in critical condition. The words did not arrive in sequence. They crashed into me, fragments I could not grasp. Daughter, critical. The world constricted. The dust took on a metallic taste in my mouth. What occurred? My voice struggled to rise above the clamor of the rotors. A pause ensued. Paper rustled. Somewhere behind her, a monitor beeped too rapidly. Your husband's new wife brought her in. She claimed a fall, but the injuries do not match. The nurse swallowed hard. I contacted the detective. He is not taking action. Why? Because her brother is the police chief. The alley was constricted. My world contracted with it. I observed my team loading the boy and his grandmother into the truck. Their mouths moved in a language I could not hear over the rushing in my head. Listen to me, the nurse whispered, drawing courage from a source no one had provided her. If you want the truth to emerge, it is on you for a moment. The war zone surrounding me was quieter than the phone line. I stated, prepare her chart. Do not discharge. Document everything. Photograph everything. Ensure chain of custody on every piece of clothing. I am 6,000 miles away, but I am coming. Ma'am, she began. The line went dead. Not her fault. Mine. I was already in motion. I handed over my second sat phone along with the final instructions for the handoff. Take them to Gaziantep. Keep the convoy moving. You are violating protocol, he remarked, not in accusation, but as a statement of fact. Protocol does not raise my child, I replied. Wheels up in 30. 30 turned into 21. Our pilot owed me from Kabul. He didn't ask why. On the runway, heat shimmered off the tarmac resembling a mirage of everything I had believed to be solid. As the aircraft struggled for altitude, I focused on the map resting on my lap, depicting the ocean that lay between a mother and the room where her daughter was illuminated by lights far too bright for delicate eyes. The reality of systems is this: they harbor secrets for those who create them. The instant a system selected my daughter's suffering as its cost for silence, it declared itself my adversary. What occurs when those entrusted with protection become the very individuals who erase a child's truth? You cease to seek permission. I eliminated 3 names from a list I had maintained for years. The detective, the chief, and the woman who had brought my daughter in with a narrative she could not convince a nurse with a conscience to believe. I was not returning home to shout. I was returning home to manipulate every lever they presumed belonged to them. And when the aircraft landed, their influence would begin to diminish on camera, in print, and in court, until the only remnant of their protection was a headline detailing its failure. The air struck me like a barrier as the plane door swung open, humid, heavy, and wrong. It was not the air one desires in their lungs when aware that their child is inhaling it from a hospital bed. My boots made contact with the tarmac before the stairs were completely secured. I carried no suitcase, no belongings, no script for niceties. Merely a single backpack containing the documents necessary to strip individuals of their power. A black SUV awaited me. The driver did not speak English, nor did he need to. He was familiar with the route. St. Francis Children's Hospital, directly through the city's dormant arteries. Streetlights blurred past the windows, transforming my reflection into something I scarcely recognized. Hair pressed down by a headset, eyes that had not blinked sufficiently to shed tears. The nurse awaited my arrival in the ER corridor. No smile, no casual conversation, just a slow shake of her head before she guided me inside. The room was excessively white. My daughter's complexion was too pale. Machines hummed, beeped, and hissed, as if her fragile body had been converted into a battlefield of its own. She is stable for the time being, the nurse whispered. However, you must see this. She drew back the blanket, causing my breath to catch. Dark bruises formed in patterns that do not result from a simple fall. There were tiny finger marks on her wrist, too small to be mine, too cruel to be from someone who should have cared for her. I gently stroked her hair. Who did this to you, sweetheart? Her eyelids fluttered, yet she remained asleep. The nurse placed a sealed evidence bag on the counter. Inside were the clothes she had arrived in, still damp in areas I preferred not to contemplate. I meticulously documented everything, photographs, timestamps. I also recorded my conversation with the detective. You recorded it? I inquired, my tone sharper than I had meant it to be. She nodded when he instructed, drop it. I was aware you would require proof. At that moment, the door opened without a knock. She entered as if she owned the place. The woman my husband had wed while I was still struggling to breathe after the divorce papers were served. Her perfume was the first assault, followed by her voice, sweet yet toxic. You are here, she remarked, almost smiling. We should converse before you act impulsively. I rose slowly, every part of me transitioning from mother to something she did not wish to confront. No, I replied, stepping closer. We will talk after I make 3 calls. The first to a lawyer, the second to a journalist, and the third, I glanced at the nurse, who gave the slightest nod to someone of higher authority than her brother. Her smile wavered. You are unaware of what you are initiating. I turned my gaze to my daughter. You have no idea what I am concluding. By the time she exited the room, her perfume had already been overshadowed by the scent of antiseptic and fury. The nurse handed me a piece of paper. 3 numbers, 3 names. Allies. She stated, you will need them. The first number belonged to a man whose voice could expedite court dates without authorization. The second was for a journalist who had established a career in exposing individuals who believed they were beyond reach. The third was a number you would never save in your phone. You maintain a record on paper because certain names cannot be associated with you until it is too late for anyone to intervene with what is forthcoming. I entered the hallway and contacted the journalist first. Who is safeguarding her? I inquired. There was silence on the other end. Then came a slow exhale. I had been anticipating someone from within the family to speak, he replied. They have managed to keep their hands clean for a decade, but I possess files, sealed police reports, and hospital logs. You are the crucial element. We arranged to meet before dawn. Upon returning to my daughter's room, she was still asleep, but her hand had moved just enough for me to notice the small hospital bracelet, displaying her name, her date of birth, and the term victim. It felt inappropriate to see it there. She was not a victim. Not anymore. I departed the hospital just before 4 a.m. The city was still in slumber, but I was wide awake. My cab dropped me off at a side entrance of a parking garage. No cameras, no attendants, just one familiar figure leaning against a vehicle. My father-in-law. He remained in uniform, his medals reflecting the dim light, his expression unreadable. I heard, he stated simply. And I am not here to soothe you. I am here to ensure you do not miss. We settled in the car. He handed me a folder, thin yet heavy with the burden of truth. Inside were photographs, sworn statements, and something I had not anticipated, a signed affidavit from one of the police chief's own officers. Why would he take this risk? I asked. Because, my father-in-law replied, as he started the engine. Even the most corrupt walls have cracks, and you possess a hammer. We drove in silence, the streets blurring by. We were not heading home. We were not going to the station. We were heading directly to the one location her brother could not access, the federal building. By sunrise, they would have a file so substantial that the only way to conclude it would be in court. The lobby of the federal building was deserted, except for a security guard who regarded us as if we were bringing a storm inside. My father-in-law's badge and uniform allowed us to pass without a single inquiry. On the 12th floor, a woman dressed in a dark suit awaited my arrival. She did not introduce herself, merely gesturing with a slight nod towards a conference room. Inside, the walls were adorned with locked cabinets. She set a black recorder on the table and pressed a button. "Begin from the start," she instructed. I disclosed everything. The phone call in Syria, the hospital visit, the detective who failed to appear, the hushed warnings regarding the police chief. Each word felt as though it was scraping something raw within me. Yet, I continued. Once I finished, the woman in the suit reached into her folder and slid a photograph across the table. It depicted my daughter, taken months prior, seated on a playground bench. The date stamp revealed precisely when it was captured. I had been abroad. She ought to have been in school. She was under surveillance, the woman stated softly. This situation is more significant than you realize. We have been constructing a case for years, but your testimony provides a name to their actions. It connects the chief's family to several cases we could not pursue without a direct witness. I reclined, the atmosphere thick with a mix of relief and anger. So, what happens now? Now, she replied, we act swiftly before they become aware that you have spoken. By the time I departed, 3 distinct teams had been assigned. Federal agents, internal affairs, and a civilian oversight unit were all converging on a single target. My father-in-law accompanied me to the car. He remained silent until we reached the street. They will panic, he remarked. And when they panic, they will make errors. That is when we apply pressure. Indeed, the first sign of trouble emerged less than an hour later. My phone vibrated. A message from an unknown number appeared. Just 2 words, "Call me." I disregarded it. Moments later, another message arrived. This time from my husband. "She has vanished." Packed a bag and disappeared. I gazed at the screen, fully aware of where she had fled. Her family believed they could fortify their defenses, conceal her, and protect her from the impending danger. However, they had overlooked one crucial fact. You cannot escape a truth that is already in motion. And by sunset, the first arrest would confirm it. As the sun set, the streets surrounding the police chief's residence appeared deceptively tranquil. Children were riding their bicycles, and sprinklers were hissing over well-kept lawns. However, I sensed a change in the atmosphere. From the passenger seat of my father-in-law's truck, I observed 2 unmarked sedans approach the block. They parked without any fanfare, their doors swinging open to disclose federal agents dressed in plain clothes. There were no sirens or shouting, only quiet, purposeful actions. "This is it," my father-in-law whispered. "They are going in." The agents did knock, and one of them used a key. Later, I would discover that it had been confiscated during a raid earlier that day. They vanished inside, and the seconds felt like hours. Then, a figure appeared, not the police chief, but his wife, my husband's stepmother, with disheveled hair and darting eyes. She was not yet in handcuffs. 2 additional agents followed, each carrying sealed evidence bags. Even from my position, I recognized one of the bags, the dark leather purse my daughter had described to the hospital staff, the one she claimed had been used to transport something. My phone buzzed again, this time it was my husband. "They are saying you have ruined everything. Dad is furious." I did not respond because, across the street, the police chief finally emerged. He wore no uniform, just a gray t-shirt and jeans, with his wrists shackled in steel. The neighbors halted mid-sentence, staring in disbelief. A woman dropped her grocery bag, causing oranges to roll across the sidewalk. One of the agents briefly communicated into a radio before signaling to a black SUV that had been idling at the corner. "They are taking him directly to federal holding," my father-in-law clarified as he started the engine. No pit stops, no backroom deals. Yet, I was no longer focused on the chief, my attention was on the woman in the doorway, my husband's stepmother, clutching the frame as if it could support her. Her eyes met mine across the street, and for a fleeting moment, her expression lost all semblance of defiance. She realized that whatever influence she believed she possessed, whatever security her family name had once provided, was now non-existent. My father-in-law engaged the gears of action. "Tomorrow," he stated, "we will pursue the remaining individuals. Every single person who remained silent while your daughter endured suffering." I acknowledged his words, yet my thoughts were already racing ahead. For I was not merely seeking justice. I was intent on dismantling the silence that had protected them, and I was determined to ensure that silence was publicly shattered. By morning, the news had erupted across all major media outlets. Police chief arrested under a federal warrant. Evidence connected to an ongoing investigation into child abuse. I did not require the full articles to understand that my husband's family was in disarray. The phone calls began before dawn. Some numbers were familiar, others were not. I allowed each call to go to voicemail. At precisely 9:12 a.m., the front gate camera captured my husband standing there, still clad in his military-issued jacket, his jaw clenched. He did not press the buzzer. He merely gazed at the camera as if willing it to open. I remained motionless. Instead, I slid the manila envelope across the kitchen table towards my father-in-law. Inside was a compilation of everything I had gathered during sleepless nights. Names, dates, recorded conversations, and sworn statements from hospital personnel. Evidence that my husband's stepmother had been present and complicit on the night my daughter was harmed. He remained silent. There was no need for words. He simply picked up the envelope and exited through the back door towards his truck. By noon, my phone buzzed again. This time, it was a news alert, announcing a live press conference. My father-in-law stood at the podium in full uniform, surrounded by reporters, cameras clicking like rapid gunfire. "This investigation will not conclude with a single arrest," he declared, his voice unwavering, each word carefully articulated. "No title, no badge. No familial connection will shield those who inflict harm on children or those who enable such actions." The camera shifted, capturing my husband at the periphery of the crowd, his complexion ashen, his lips drawn into a tight line. For the first time, I perceived uncertainty in his gaze. The comments section erupted in real time. "At last, action is being taken." It was about time for the silence to be shattered. "Who is the woman standing in the doorway?" They were still unaware. That aspect, the public identification, the dismantling of every shred of their authority that was imminent. When it occurred, it would not merely be a headline. It would signify the moment the entire city comprehended that their previously untouchable circle had been abruptly breached. The subsequent 48 hours unfolded in a haze of subpoenas, interviews, and a profound silence that precedes a tempest. My residence was now under discreet observation, not for my protection, but to guarantee that no one attempted to negotiate off the record. On the third morning, I received the call I had anticipated. "Ma'am, it is time." I refrained from asking questions. Instead, I donned the same plain black dress I had worn to my mother's funeral, a dress that signified business rather than sorrow, and proceeded to the courthouse. The corridor outside courtroom B was filled with familiar faces. Friends of my husband from the department, relatives of his new wife, and several high-ranking city officials who had previously greeted me with smiles at fundraisers. Not a single one of them met my gaze. Within the courtroom, the prosecutor's voice was sharp, almost clinical. "Your Honor, the state requests the admission of Exhibit C, the complete recording of the dialogue between the defendant and Detective Mark Hanley, recorded 2 days post-incident." The room fell silent, and then my voice resonated through the speakers, calm, clear, and unwavering, as I inquired of my husband's new wife, "Do you believe she will ever recover from what you inflicted upon her?" Her response, laced with arrogance, was, "She will survive, but perhaps she will learn to know her place." Gasps echoed through the gallery. The judge's pen halted at midnight. My husband's jaw clenched, yet he did not cast a glance at her. The prosecutor continued without hesitation. "Your Honor, Exhibit D. The bank transactions revealing payments to various parties in return for concealing evidence." One by one, their secrets emerged, including names, amounts, and dates. The protective network they believed to be unseen was now exposed under the bright lights of the courtroom. Once the proceedings concluded, the judge did not immediately call for adjournment. Instead, he leaned forward, his voice laden with gravity. This court will not tolerate the misuse of power, particularly when it is wielded to protect those who inflict harm upon the most defenseless. I will ensure that the full force of the law is enforced. I refrained from looking at my husband as I exited. There was no need, for the next time we would encounter one another, it would not be in our home. It would be across a table, with the law standing between us. The verdict arrived more swiftly than anyone had anticipated. Guilty on all charges. The gavel struck down like the concluding beat of a war drum. My husband's new spouse gripped the edge of the defense table, her perfectly manicured nails digging into the wood until they turned pale. His gaze was fixed on the floor. The same man who once took pride in his control was now stripped of every bit of it. Outside, the courthouse steps were inundated with reporters, their microphones extending like spears. I did not pause. I had no comment for them. Not at that moment. My sole objective was to return home to my daughter, who was still healing, still learning to sleep without trepidation. That evening, as I sat beside her bed, my phone vibrated with a message from an unfamiliar number. I was uncertain. I was convinced it was from one of the officers who had been at our residence the night of the incident, the one who had laughed in my face when I pleaded for assistance. I responded slowly. You did not wish to know, and now you do. The days that ensued were tranquil. Not serene, not yet, but a tranquility that signified the storm had subsided. The police chief, her brother, was compelled into early retirement. His badge was revoked, his influence extinguished. The detective, who had declined to investigate, lost both his position and his pension. My husband would spend the next 2 decades behind the very walls he once used to ensnare others. As for me, I did not rejoice. Revenge had not been sweet. It had been a necessity. One afternoon, while I was preparing tea, my daughter wandered into the kitchen, her hair tousled from sleep. She leaned against me and softly said, "Mom, you fulfilled your promise." I refrained from inquiring which promise she referred to. Instead, I embraced her more tightly because ultimately, this situation was not about dominance, victory, or causing them to falter. It was about ensuring that every entrance they previously used to conceal their wrongdoings was securely locked for good. And for the first time in months, when I gazed at her, I no longer perceived fear. I recognized freedom.